guys, my name is Olivia Savitri and I will talking about multicultural issue in short story Borders by Thomas King. So let's start with something very simple. Imagine when someone asks you, where are you from? And we will answer easily, from Indonesia, Canada, or the US. But what if the answer you give is not accepted? But what if the system tells you that's not a real answer? This is exactly the situation Thomas King explores in his short story Borders. So, who is Thomas King? Thomas King is a Canadian writer with Cherokee heritage, and many of his works focus on Indigenous identity and the impact of colonial systems. Historically, Indigenous nations like the Blackfoot existed long before modern countries such as Canada and the United States. However, colonial borders were created without considering indigenous cultures. This historical background is very important because Borders is not just a fictional story. It reflects the real cultural and the political problems. The story follows a mother and her son who wants to cross the border from Canada to the United States. When the border officer asks the mother whether she is Canadian or American, she answers simply, Blackfoot. She refused to choose between the two countries. Because of this, they are forced to wait in the border area, unable to enter either country. And from this moment, the story begins to show its multicultural issues. One major issue here is cultural identity, when the mother defines herself through her indigenous culture, not through nationality. This relates closely to Stuart Hall's theory of cultural identity, which says that identity is shaped by history, by shared experiences, and collective memory. For the mother, being Blackfoot is not just a label, but it is who she is, and the story shows how modern systems often fail to recognize identities that do not fit into national categories. Another important issue is the border itself. In the story, the border is more than just a place. It becomes a symbol of power and exclusion. The mother and her son are literally stuck between two countries. This situation can be explained using Homikababa theory of liminality. Baba explained that marginalized people often exist in an in-between space and in borders. That idea is shown very clearly through the physical setting and the story. The story also shows cultural resistance when the mother does not shout or argue aggressively. Instead, her resistance is calm but firm. She simply refuses to change her identity to satisfy the system. This connects to multicultural theory by Will Kimlicka, who argues that indigenous groups deserve special recognition because their cultures exist before modern nation-states. And the mother's refusal challenges the idea that everyone must identify themselves in the same way. Another multicultural issue present in the story is institutional discrimination. The border officers are not portrayed as evil individuals, but they represent a system that only recognizes certain identities as valid. This shows how discrimination can exist structurally even when people are just following the rules. From a multicultural perspective, this reflects how dominant cultures control which identities are considered legitimate. Finally, the presence of the media in the story is also important. The situation only changes when journalists arrive. This suggests that indigenous voices are often ignored unless they gain public attention. It highlights the unequal power relationship between dominant groups and marginalized cultures. So, in the end, borders is not really about crossing a national border. It is about identity, recognition, and the struggle of indigenous people to be seen and respected on their own terms. Through all multicultural theories like Strathal's cultural identity, Homika Bhabha's liminality, and Will Kimlicka's multiculturalism, we can understand that this story represents a much larger issue, like how systems built by colonial powers continue to shape and limit indigenous life today. And so that's all from me. I hope you all understand what I'm saying. Because if not, please don't make me stand at the border between past and remedial. Thank you for listening. Thank you guys.